Thank you, everyone, for joining us for today's webinar, The Environmental and Social Impact of Digital Credentials. My name's Cody, I'm from Credible, and I'll be your host for today. If you're not familiar with Credible, we are the world's leading digital certificate and digital badging software. So, digital credentials are the modern evolution of physical credentials, replacing the tedious administrative task of producing, printing, and posting or mailing credentials to recipients. But they raise a number of common questions. How does the environmental impact of digital credentials differ from traditional credentials? Do digital credentials carry the same social impact? How can organizations assess the sustainability of digital credentials? Many prospective issuers share these concerns and need to include the answers to these questions in their digital credential business case. In this webinar, we're going to explore the common queries and the environmental and social impact that digital credentials have compared to traditional credentials. We'll look at the sustainability of digital credentials and how this provides long-term benefits for recipients. And we'll also consider the challenges faced by issuers that don't transition. Let's dive in. And we'll begin with a bit of framing on why organizations place or have to place importance on environmental and social impact. We all have a responsibility to be conscious of our interactions with the planet, and a greater focus is being placed on the accountability of organizations to do their part. Similarly, organizations are measured on how well they manage the relationships and impacts they have on their employees, customers, and communities. Organizations that place a greater importance on positive environmental and social impacts seek vendors that share these same values and will help them to maintain their responsible practices. So, organizations are placing greater emphasis on being environmentally and socially responsible, but traditional credentials are failing to support those practices. Let's explore that. First, let's consider the sustainability of traditional credentials. Physical credentials are often issued as a certificate that's distributed in person or through mail or international shipping. And that means that the carbon costs of the paper itself, as well as emissions generated from shipping, sometimes on that international scale, are going in there. And before the recipient even receives their certificate, there's a risk that the document could get lost or damaged or destroyed. And there might be printing errors that require reprints, or the recipient address might be out of date and it requires a second piece of mail to be sent. This all incurs a cost, monetarily and environmentally. And often these costs end up getting transferred to the recipient, especially when referring to degree and transcript type documents. So organizations can also, in this sort of sustainability mindset, go out of business and not leave any sort of facility or vehicle for reissuance or verification, which obviously creates a negative recipient experience, but creates a situation where the credentials have no way of proving verification. And then what about the social impact? The majority of recipients are proud to share their latest achievements, and gaining a certificate is an exciting time. But some higher education institutions have previously asked graduates not to share images of their degree certificates in a bid to prevent fraud. PDF certificates, although considered a modern alternative, aren't supported on many platforms, which creates additional steps to celebrate online and leads to fewer recipients taking the opportunity to share their achievement. Traditional certificates also paint a narrow picture of a candidate. For example, a candidate presents a certificate stating that they are proficient in Microsoft Excel, but What does that mean? What level of experience do they have in the software? Have they demonstrated understanding and application of a different formula? Confirming this information from a certificate alone is almost impossible and can cost both the candidate an opportunity and the hiring organization a quality employee. Traditional certificates may have been the standard throughout history, but in today's digital world, they lack security, visibility into competency, and the ability to support an organization to increase awareness for their programs. And then finally, there's the environmental impact, which is much easier to see. Certificates are often printed on high quality parchment. They include a seal, an official mark, maybe a holographic sticker to show it is an official document. That means a physical certificate is not only using paper based resources, but some plastic products as well. These materials break down, degrade over time, inks fade, papers become fragile, and it's easy for wear and tear to appear. Even if framed and mounted on the wall, colors and details can fade or bleach over time through exposure to natural light. Many existing certificates will never be recycled or cannot be recycled through that inclusion of microplastics. And every reproduced document requires additional resources to create it. So we can see from that framing, traditional credentials aren't beneficial in terms of environmental and social impact or sustainability. But if issuers choose to continue using traditional credentials, what challenges are they likely to face? Innovation is a key aspect of remaining competitive in today's digital world. Organizations that delay or reject digital transformation can quickly fall behind their competitors that are more keen to embrace it. A large and growing percentage of candidates do show a preference for digital credentials, and generally, issuers that fail to meet the demands of these candidates are going to lose customers to the competitors that do. And with innovation comes improvements to internal processes and workflows. Issuers that continue with traditional physical credentials and even more modern PDF credentials lack full control over the management of their credentials. Physical and PDF certificates cannot be expired remotely, right? You, as the issuer, have to trust the recipient to return or destroy invalid or expired documents. Any editorial or design changes require replacements of the existing certificate with the updated or amended information. And you, as the issuer, also have to trust that any credential you issue with an expiration date is not going to be fraudulently spoofed or edited to remain valid. Every reprint incurs additional costs, and ongoing management of traditional credentials requires dedicated administration time, taking staff away from other responsibilities. And then next is, I think, something we all experience, right? But costs of living increases aren't just impacting domestic households. Organizations will be or are feeling the squeeze as well, as the cost of building rents, energy, facilities, materials, and staffing rates all increase. And this impacts every aspect of traditional credential issuance and management. So that's from design to printing to packaging to mailing, and then ongoing costs of providing verification of the credentials, managing administrative updates like name changes, logo changes, expiration dates. Costs are not looking likely to fall anytime in the near future. And issuers considering alternative options like digital credentials should consider comparing future costs and increased costs rather than doing a like for like comparison at current time. We've already touched on how traditional credentials have a negative environmental impact, right? Due to the use of paper and plastics. Issuers that choose not to move away from traditional credentials will always have an increased carbon footprint due to their paper use. Issuers can offset this slightly by only choosing recycled materials. So, you look at the comparison between choosing paper from new sources. The carbon footprint for 100,000 pieces of paper is 6,000 kilograms, while the carbon footprint for the same amount of paper sourced from recycled materials is 3,200 kilograms, a reduction of 47%, right? That includes the energy required to create the paper and recycle it up to 7 times prior to landfill disposal, assuming that actually happens. And then finally, issuers that choose to remain with physical credentials may inadvertently lock themselves into inefficient and costly platforms that fail to meet the organizational needs as it grows. Alternative credentialing options like digital credentials aren't intended to replace platforms, but instead integrate with any existing software, right? So issuers that are reluctant to undergo that digital transformation are unlikely to consider more modern platforms and processes to deliver their programs or manage their membership. This can create internal frustration, lead to increased turnover as staff have to carry out many of their responsibilities manually. So now we know some of the impact of traditional credentials and the challenges issuers face if they choose to continue using them. Let's take a look at how digital credentials compare. And first, I want to bring back up the sustainability of digital credentials. Digital credentials, when done properly, are hosted on a dedicated credential page with a unique URL. That means they are always online, easily retrievable whenever a recipient needs to present their credential as verification of their abilities or proof of their membership. The credential URL can be bookmarked, right? The credential delivery email can be saved or pinned or starred in inboxes, and recipients can add the URL to a professional portfolio or LinkedIn profile as evidence of their competencies. And recipients should be able to provide evidence of their gained skills and abilities, even if the issuing organization has closed or merged and is no longer providing services for verification. Digital credentials without a set expiration date can always be retrieved and verified as valid and authentic. Even expired digital credentials can still be viewed, although they're updated with a page width banner that says it's expired, it's no longer valid. Just because an issuer is no longer available doesn't mean recipients should lose out on the opportunity to use their hard-earned credentials or be forced to take new programs to replace a lost or damaged certificate. Another key aspect in the sustainability of digital credentials is guaranteed accessibility. No one should be prevented from viewing, using, or engaging with their digital credential due to the technologies they use or barriers created through an account creation requirement, right? The dedicated credential page can be easily retrieved, is accessible from all different devices, desktops, tablets, smartphones. Issuers can also opt for digital wallet card support that enables their recipients to upload their digital credential to their Google or Apple wallet, where it could be presented on the go with a scannable QR code that's going to link back to the dedicated credential page. So what then about the social impact of digital credentials? For recipients, digital credentials provide a much clearer picture of their abilities, competencies, knowledge, and skill sets. The program descriptions provide detail on the program and what was involved. Skill tags added to digital credentials provide a list of skills that needed to be demonstrated in order to gain the credential. And uploaded evidence provides proof of applied knowledge. So all from one location, all from that dedicated credential page. This makes it easier for recipients that are job hunting to prove their eligibility for prospective roles and help them stand out against competing candidates. And third parties that are looking at candidates have a greater understanding of how an individual's skills may fit into their existing departments and have increased confidence in their decision to hire a specific candidate. And then celebrating an achievement is sort of a given, right? Especially in today's social media centric world, all users are going to be keen to share their wins, their achievements, positive life experiences with their network of family and friends and peers. Wherever degree certificates might be restricted from sharing and PDFs aren't fully supported, digital credentials are made to be shared. Recipients can share their digital credential to over 20 social media platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Issuers also benefit from the increased shareability of digital credentials, as every share and engagement online increases the awareness for the issuer's brand, their programs, and their credentials. As individuals see their credential holding friends share their awards and achieve successes like employment or promotions through their credentials, they are going to want more to have those credentials for their own professional development. Next up, fraud is a constant issue for all types of certificates and awards. Degree certificates in particular are highly or regularly at the center of certification fraud. So for example, in an ADP analysis on 2.6 million background checks, it was found that 44% of candidates had lied about their work history, 41% had lied about their education, and an incredible 23% of resumes contained outright falsified credentials and licenses. Digital credentials, on the other hand, are protected against fraud through several checks carried out as the organization onboards to ensure they are the genuine issuing organization, and on the issued credential itself using the verification button. Issuers can also choose to have their credentials written to the blockchain, which provides even higher levels of security against fraud by making it almost impossible for blockchain credentials to be edited, amended, or removed without proper authorization. All right, finally, let's explore the environmental impact of digital credentials. We previously mentioned blockchain credentials as the highest level of security against fraud. Understandably, we do tend to get a lot of questions about the environmental impact of using the blockchain to secure digital credentials and whether it can effectively offset the impact of using paper for physical credentials. Credible uses blockchain technology to secure issued credentials, but credentials aren't just added to the blockchain individually, and credential data itself is never added to the blockchain. So instead, once a credential is created, the record of that creation is encrypted as a series of numbers that represents the credential information. So those encryptions are then bundled together by thousands into a low volume file and written to the blockchain as a single transaction, which drastically dilutes the impact of using the blockchain for security. And then some issuers worry about meeting the needs of multi-generational users and how some of their candidates are still keen to hold physical copies of their credentials. Digital credentials don't replace the ability to hold a physical copy. Instead, the cost of printing is transferred from you as the issuer to the recipient. You as the issuer can include a QR code in a certificate design to ensure that the digital certificates are ready for printing. So in that situation, if the recipient prints and presents their physical credentials, a quick scan of the QR code will take users to the digital credential where the user can view more details on the program and the issuer, maybe browse through the included skill tags, and of course, easily verify the credential. And then finally, digital credentials remain in full control of you, the issuer, at all times after issuance. This means that name changes, design updates, stakeholder changes, or error amendments are going to take seconds and are instantly reflected on the live credential. And that also allows you as the issuer to expire or extend credentials without having to, trust a recipient to destroy or return any official documents or membership cards. These amendments would often take up hours within an admin's day, and use more resources for reprints and resets. Digital credentials not only eliminate the resources required for edits or updates, they can be actioned in minutes without incurring any additional costs. So, in summary, issuers that choose digital credentials over physical or PDF credentials benefit from positive impacts on the recipient experience, their commitment to reducing the organization's environmental impact, and how sustainable their credentials are. By making the switch, issuers are able to reduce the resources and time required for their administrators to create, issue, and manage credentials, and remain fully in control of their credentials, which simplifies the process and eliminates costs for future updates, amendments, or corrections. When compared to traditional and PDF credentials, issuers benefit from a reduced carbon footprint, even if choosing blockchain credentials to ensure that unrivaled level of protection against fraud or unauthorized edits. Digital credentials support issuers in their marketing efforts by providing recipients with more ways to engage and share their credentials online, boosting awareness for the issuer and their credentials, and they help to drive referrals and program growth. And finally, recipients also benefit as the increased understanding around their gained skills and competencies creates more opportunities for professional development, employment, and promotion. Now I'd like to open things up to your questions. All right, the question I have here is from Mark. Apologies for paraphrasing, but essentially, why should we go with you if we still print certificates? I want to clarify, I don't think you should ever need to print certificates after you bring on a credible yourself, right? The best way forwards, the most environmentally friendly and honestly the most locally impactful way for you to do this is to upload print ready certificate designs. So the way that usually works is you have something that is print ready and somebody can take that to a local printing shop or a local partner, which you could also specify in order to get their credential printed. So you can give them the parameters to do that and allow them to go print themselves if they choose to have that physical certificate. And of course, prevents the situation where you send something off to everybody. And, for me, my diploma from college is sitting in a box somewhere since the last time I moved. So you allow somebody who wants to celebrate with something physical as well as digital go out and get that for themselves so you don't end up with your credentials filed away in a drawer. All right, the next question that I have here is on data hosting. Essentially asking if hosting the data for the digital credentials is negatively impactful. I'll say that we work with vendors that do really well here, but keep in mind data is already getting hosted, right? It's not just done in that visible paper format. How many educational institutions are storing the same type of information that we have in a credible on the credential page, but it's filed away on tape drives somewhere in storage? The data still exists. Your organization is still processing that data. It's just being made more convenient, more available, more useful. So it's actually going from a somewhat dormant and resource costly position to something that is a direct benefit to you and your recipients. All right, this is a really good one. I will paraphrase slightly, but I'm almost going to read it verbatim. David, thank you for asking this. I'm worried about the future of certifications in the digital world being tied to a verification company. If a credential or badge is issued from a credible and for some horrid reason a credible goes away, the paper versus digital argument, does that link on LinkedIn go away? Is that record gone? In addition, what happens when your credential is recorded on the blockchain? So first part of that question, in the situation where a credible no longer exists, we have a continuance policy. And it's one that I can, I believe, send out to you, where we know that when and if for any reason, a credible no longer issues credential, no longer exists for whatever reason, those credentials are staying. they are persistent. They will, outlast me and everybody else in this webinar, essentially. They are designed for that. So unlike educational institutions that have been closing for the past 10 years, where you have to mail something to a PO box and hope that verification gets back to you, we have already planned out exactly how that would work for us. We care about that pretty seriously. So we have a continuance policy in place that will make sure those records never go away. When credentials are recorded on the blockchain, so the second part of that question, it's taking sort of a snapshot in time of what the credential should look like, encoding that essentially in encrypted hash and sending that to the blockchain. So what it's really looking for when you verify that recorded credential on a blockchain, it's looking for that match to the encoded data. And if it sees any changes have been made, it throws up a red flag and says, this doesn't look correct. So it is effectively impossible to hack because of the resources required to go in there and actually change the blockchain record. And even if somebody knew how to do that, the ability to go in and change an encrypted hash is very, very difficult, pretty much impossible. So when it's recorded on the blockchain, it's sending information to this distributed ledger that exists on thousands of personal computers and servers across the world. But there's no personally identifiable information. All of it's encoded and nothing is really at risk. All right, question here from Shannon. Do you have folks to help with the visual design of the credentials or basic templates with the ability to add branding? So looking for digital badges for experience and digital certificates for academic work. This is a really good question. So we actually saw an increased need for this recently. I will say I am not a graphic designer. I can go in and make a certificate or make a badge with the tools that Accredible offers. So if you've ever used something like Canva, if you don't have a visual design department, it works a lot like that, where there are pre-built templates, there are pre-formatted objects and different tools that help make you able to do this yourself. If you do want something that has a higher level of design, we actually have recently introduced the ability to request designs from the team. And we also found, of course, design was just one part that people tended to want some assistance with. So we decided to sort of weaponize our experience for you so that if you want help and assistance in figuring out how to architect your program, or you want assistance in getting up and running, educating your audience, etc., we have a team that's dedicated to doing that, to helping people get up and running, to hitting the goals that you have internally, and essentially just making you as successful as you can possibly be. So Shannon, I hope you don't mind, I'll try and get you in touch with that team. All right. Thank you everyone again for joining us. If you'd like to learn more about benefits of digital credentials, you can join us in future webinars or head over to our website, accredible.com, and download some of our existing resources. Thank you again, everyone, and have a great day.